And welcome back, guys. My name is Jake, and today we're gonna be. Oh, we good here? We're good. We're good. Today we're gonna do a little video about one of the fights upcoming. I'm gonna go over the actual fight in a different video, but just wanted to come on here, give a little video about how I feel about this guy, Erickson Lubin. Uh, he is Erickson Lubin, nicknamed the Hammer, longtime super welterweight contender. He's 29. He's 27-2, and he's fighting for an interim title, but I view the WBC interim the WBC interim junior middleweight title is actually a legit title. I sort of view it as like the WBC has two titles in this division because I do view Vergil Ortiz as a championship level fighter. He is the WBC interim champion. Sebastian Fundora is fighting Keith Thurman later in October for the actual WBC. I'd say not interim, the full WBC junior middleweight title. But let's go over Erickson Lubin. We're going to talk about. We're going to do a quick recap of his career so far. Talk about some of his fights, how he's looked, how his style has progressed, and then how he goes into this fight with Vergil Ortiz Jr. And does he really? And most of all, biggest thing, does he have a chance this fight? Because people are writing him off, and fairly so, give him some past performances. But let's get into it. So, Erickson Lubin's a good fighter, man. I'm going to say this right now. He's a good, solid fighter. I think he gets unfairly maligned because he got obliterated by Jermell Charlo. Was 2017 or 16? 2017. He got blown out in one round. Literally, he sort of kind of ducked, and Charlo threw. I think it was a left. He threw it was a right hook or left hook. But it was something as I'm gonna kind of ducked under something, and he ducked under, and he kind of just like ran into a shot that was coming under. He was done, and we couldn't make the count, and it was over. And going to that fight, he was undefeated. Everyone thought he was gonna be too strong for Charlo because it was. I don't know if that was Jermell's first defense. Yeah, I don't know if that was Jermell's first defense. Let's see. Um, his first defense. No, no, he had a no, he had a defense. He knocked out Charles Hadley in his first defense in 6 rounds. Um, gotcha. But yeah, no, it was his second defense and was supposed to be his toughest test, even when he defeated John Jackson for the vacant title. Um, but let's go over Lubin's career. So he started 2013, and it's funny, people I'd be like people I've seen. Now I made this mistake when I first saw him fight. Not to be rude, I thought he was Cuban, and not be rude to obviously this picture he looks African, he looks American, but when he fought Charlo, I remember watching that fight live, and people were I thought he was Cuban, and I didn't know about him. I only knew about Charlo. I'd watched Charlo, or no, I'd watched Jamal fight a couple of guys. It was actually my first fight watching. It was my first fight. I'm watching Jermell, and I'm gonna make a Charlo video, probably a bunch of videos about their whole stories. Let's be honest, guys. I'll say this now: the saga of both Charlos is something that's such an enigma of their careers that doesn't make any sense. At one point, they were both destined to be megastars in boxing, especially Jamal, because he's still undefeated. He's still undefeated. But even though the Jermell is not, he had some struggles at junior middle. He at least had some balls, and now yes, he did run from Canelo, but he at least took the Canelo fight, which some of the Jamal had many opportunities to do. And it's a whole different thing. We'll get into that in future videos. So Erickson Lubin, he started his career in 2013, and he progressed pretty quickly. His first win was a first round TKO. He didn't really fight anybody of note for a while. He took on, he took on I'm not a known journeyman, but a mediocre journeyman in Noe Bonango. not Bolancos, Bolaños defeated him by decision. He took on Norberto Gonzalez, beat him by decision. And at this point, you realize that if you look back at his career before the Charlo fight, some of his tough fights he wasn't knocking the guys out, but he was everyone else he was destroying. Um, I remember one guy who people were really high on in 2015 was Kenneth Council. He I think he's still fighting when he fights a cruiserweight now, and he's 11, 12, and 1, so he's not a good fighter at all. But people were actually kind of high on him, and he got obliterated first round, it destroyed. Well, I said people were high on him. I heard people say, "Oh, he could be good." Well, no, wasn't good at all. But he defeated guys like Michael Finney, as I mentioned, Kenneth Council, Orlando Laura, who was I think was Laura from World Champion. Hold on, Orlando Laura. He never fought for. I think he fought for a world title. See, I told you the IBA. He fought for the IBA world title in 2012. No, but that's the IBA. I think he did fight for what? No, okay, that's all right. So then he did. The IBA is not really a legitimate world title. It's the same level as the IBA or the WBA. It's probably less than WBF actually. Kind of funny. But yeah, he progressed quickly, and I believe the first fight that I think was like a test for him was in 2016 against Daniel Sandoval. Daniel Sandoval is a good fighter. He had a career record of 39-5, pretty solid guy. Nothing great. Nothing great, but was still a pretty solid guy. A good solid Mexican fighter. I don't think he was never like a great fighter, but he was a really solid Mexican level fighter. Like he was one of the Mexican level fighters that was just below that the overall contender level because of his fights. But when Lubin knocked him out, he was 14-0. He had some stock behind him, and when he blew out Sandoval, okay, he beat someone pretty decent because at that point he really hadn't fought. He'd fought some okay guys, but really outside of Norberto Don Gonzalez, really nobody of real note. Really to be honest with you. And trying to see BoxRec. I don't want to watch Chris Algieri talk about Lennox Lewis. All right, I love Lennox, whatever. So after Daniel Sandoval took on Mr. Ivan Montero, who was 21-1, I think. No, was he? What was the record? Oh yeah, sorry, 20-1. He beat him by decision and took on Juan Dubaldo Cabrera, knocked him out. Who was 23-1. He knocked him out 2 rounds, and then really he took on when he took on Jorge Cota in who at the time was, I believe, when he fought Lubin. Now he hadn't fought for any world titles, but he had lost to Marco Antonio Rubio, who was a good solid fighter. Francisco Masvidal, overall solid mid-level guys. He was 25-1, and when he blew out Cota, he destroyed him in 4 rounds. When he blew him out, everyone thought, okay, he beat Jorge Cota. Now, Jorge Cota, in my opinion, wasn't even a top 20 junior middleweight at the time, and he ended up getting destroyed by Jermell Charlo in 3 rounds in the future. But when he fought Charlo, even though the time Charlo had he was 20, Charlo was 29-0, and he was, in my opinion, the superior fighter in any, as they say, hindsight's 2020, right? Hindsight's 2020. But Oh, I didn't. It's funny. I didn't know that Jermell actually defeated Gabe Rosado. Actually defeated Gabe Rosado, 2014. That's interesting. Interesting. Okay, but yeah, back to Lubin's career. So when Charlo fought him, Charlo was 29-0. How old he was, but Lubin was 18-0 and was viewed as one of the It was really being pushed by Showtime and Premier Boxing Champions. They were like, "Hey man, Lubin's going to be our big star," and he is a marketable guy, kind of down to earth, chill, and packs a punch. And he was, you know, I think this because the last three fights he was on, I think were all. I think one of them was on the undercard of Deontay Wilder's first title defense against, or no, was that actually when he fought Chris Arreola in Birmingham. Um, and once he's on that card, the Juan Amaldo Carrera card was another Showtime. I think it was another Showtime card. Yeah, it was. It was Jamal destroying Julian J. Rock Williams. Um, actually, actually had Matt Ramirez on the card. So you're looking. That's actually a good card. This is good fighters on the card. Mario Barrios, Hugo Centeno, good fighters on this card, man. Damn. Um, and and then I think the Coda card. What undercard was that on? Yeah, that was Danny Garcia fighting Keith Thurman. So pretty important stuff. Yeah. It's funny because it says WC, but I know that was WEA unification fight, but I ain't saying shit. I love that Chad Dawson was on this card. Andrew Funfar is on here. That was so great when he knocked out Chad Dawson. That was great. I remember that. Clarence Booth. My God. Heather Hardy. What fight. So, yeah. But he was getting some exposure on Showtime cards, on that kind of stuff. I think that was actually a CBS card, maybe. Or the CBS thing. But still, Showtime adjacent. And so you get more. And then he fights Charlo. And he gets obliterated. And he had to move on, but came back 2018, defeated longtime journeyman Vergil Ortiz. I might have mentioned him in the offset. I think he fought Austin Trout. I probably mentioned him in that video. He took on Ish Smith, destroyed him in 3 rounds. Took on Zakaria Atu, destroyed him in 4 rounds. Defeated Nate Gallimore, beat him in 10 rounds. And then in 2020, with COVID, I started to see improvement in his game and a more polished boxer. He was never a great boxer. He was very it wasn't gangly, but he wasn't a world level boxer. He was a good puncher, and he took on Antrel Gasha, who is still a good fighter at 38 years old. Is 24-5-1, who's still himself a good solid fighter. He just got defeated by Elijah Garcia in 2025, but he's a good fighter though. And he beat him by decision. It was a good fight, but it was a fight he won. And then he took on and then really he took a big jump. Now, I understand the guy I'm about to mention hasn't looked good since he did certain things, and he's only 30 years old. I'm not saying Lubin at this time, guys. He's 29 now. When he lost to Charlo, that was 7 years ago. He was 23 or 20. He was 22 years old. Looking back on it, he was way too young. He was way too young to fight a guy like Charlo, who was 27 or 28. Charlo was 27, but he was 29-0, and he had a lot of time fighting guys good at the division. Demetrius Hopkins, Vanes Martirosyan, a number of big names. Who the best guy that Erickson Lubin fought would probably have to be either Daniel Sandoval or Jorge Cota. And many of the guys that I mentioned on or who are on Jamal Charlo's resume before the fight would have killed the guys on Erickson Lubin. So it wasn't 1-1. He wasn't on his level. I'm sure if they fought now, it'd be a good close fight. But at the time, they weren't close. They just weren't. And he was 22. He wasn't ready. So then, by the time he defeats Gausha, or in Caswell Geisha, I can't say his name. He took on former unified junior middleweight champion Jason Rosario. Now, Jason Rosario, he's currently 25-5-2. He's only 30 years old, but he hasn't looked. He just got destroyed by Jesus Alejandro Ramos, who is, in my opinion, he's fighting. He's fighting Shane Mosley for the WC of the interim middleweight title, not junior middleweight. Middleweight. He's never fought at middleweight in his career. He started his career as a welterweight, but here he is fighting for the middleweight title. But he's a good fighter because he wins over Joe Spencer and Brian Mendoza and Jason Rosario and Johan Gonzalez. He's good, but when he defeated he defeated Julian Williams, and he was, I think he was good. So he goes in there against Charlo, or he beats Julian Williams, gets the IBF and IBO titles, wins both, knocks out Williams in 5 rounds, and then gets obliterated by Charlo in COVID in Connecticut, and gets destroyed, and then loses. And it's funny, the IBO title was on the line. Charlo instantly just got rid of it. He didn't throw it in the trash. He didn't throw it in the trash like Riddick Bowe famously for the WBC heavyweight title in the trash in 1994 or 3 or whatever that was, 94, 93, whatever. So it wasn't like that, but he then took on Erickson Lubin, and in a fight right after that, only about 7-8 months away, and he got knocked out, and it was a big. Even though Rosario wasn't full power or whatever, he's still a former unified champion who was at least a legitimate world titleist. I don't think Rosario may have been the worst world titleist in that division at the time, but still was a good fighter. 22-1, and then he took on Sebastian Fundora. So he takes on Sebastian Fundora in 2022. This was when Fundora, I don't know if Fundora was, I think he had, because Fundora, when he lost to, oh God, it was, okay, yeah, so this was the first big test for both guys. Like this was the first big test for really kind of both guys, to be honest with you. Because going into the fight, he had kind of had a similar rise to the similar fight that Erickson Lubin had. And obviously not the same guy. He's a towering inferno. Fundora is massive. He's huge. He's a massive guy. But at the time, he had just beat Sergio Garcia. Long time great Spanish fighter who's only 32. He's currently 33. 35-3. But Sergio Garcia for a number. I mean, like a number of years was the. He was the European champion for like almost 2 or 3 years, and he wasn't fighting anybody. And I'm going to beat Ted Cheeseman. That's the one time I ever watched him fight. I'm outside of the fight he had at Fundora, and they got killed by Tony Harrison. But he has some outside of Sergio Garcia. He had fought Cota. He had fought maybe Ahmed. He had fought Nate Gallimore. Not really any similar rise that Erickson Lubin had. And when he fought Lubin, he was this was for the WBC. This is for the interim title, the same title. And this is the same title that Lubin's fighting against Vergil Ortiz. It's the WBC interim world super welterweight title. The same title he's fighting in October for. I think Lubin was 26. Fundora was 24, so he's young. He was 18-1. Lubin was 24-1 coming into the fight, and it was in fucking box rec, and it was a good fight. This was the best fight of Lubin's career, in my opinion. Now let's be honest. Lubin is the only guy to defeat Jesus Alejandro Ramos Jr., who's really good, who himself is a 23-1, really solid fighter. He's going on Shane Mosley at middleweight, but he knocked the Jason Rosario, beat Gonzalez, Joseph Spencer, Brian Mendoza, really good guys in this weight class, and it was a close fight against Lubin. It wasn't like it was a close fight that he had with that Lubin, but I'll get to that. So the fight with Fundora, I think, was his best performance. Even though he lost, I still think it showed that he shows that he is hard. He gets down around 2, he gets back up, and he fights back the best he could. He drops Fundora around 7, and he was doing well in this fight, and then at the end of round 9, he was busted up really bad, and I don't remember if it was his corner or him was like, I think they were like, we had enough because Fedor was only getting better and coming on more. And Russell Mora was the ref for this fight. I mentioned him in my Joseph Ibeko video that will come out soon. Um, After that loss, which was the second of his career, he took on I'm Luis Arias, decent guy, finished him in 5 rounds. He then took on the undefeated Jesus Alejandro Ramos Jr., and he defeated him by unanimous decision. This was a close fight. He did win unanimous on the cards. One judge had it 170, 111, one 160, 112, the other 150, 113. I had it the same. It's Chris Milori. I had it 150, 113 when I went back and watched the fight recently. It was 2 years ago, but it was a good fight. And then Lubin didn't fight for 2 years, or a year and a half, and then he took on he took on a pretty solid undefeated guy, Andreal Holmes, who was 17-0, but he wasn't a knockout guy, and also was 31 and really hadn't beat anyone good. He beat Hugo Noriega, but that's really it. No one else of any real excuse me of any real significance. And then he fought Lubin in his last fight and got finished around 12. So Lubin has progressed pretty well. He has progressed pretty well since the fight with Charlo, and I think we've shown in the fight with Fundora and the fight against Ramos Jr. he can fight for adversity. He most guys at this world level, they learn it early on when they fight a tough guy. I do believe if Lubin had fought a DeAndre Hopkins, or fought a Demetrius Hopkins or a Magnus Martirosyan or someone of that level that Jermell had fought through and got through adversity and beat those guys, I think Lubin would have been more prepared. I still don't think he would have beaten Jermell 2017. He was too young, wasn't ready, blah, blah, right? But he didn't. He sort of learned all this stuff. He learned it the hard way by getting knocked the fuck out. And he learned it the hard way, and here he is arriving at his fight with the undefeated Vergil Ortiz Jr. I'm going to make a video about his career soon, and this fight coming up. This is actually November, so it technically is. It's funny how the WC is so stupid. Like, you have a fight for the actual world title in October, and then you're having an interim one 2 or 3 weeks later. Makes a whole lot of sense, doesn't it? But, I don't want to say anything about it, because if I did, I wouldn't run it like this. So, whatever. Yeah, so he's definitely improved. I don't, and now it's the big thing. With his improvements, how he's gotten better, I think the fight with Fundora, the fact that Fundora is the thing with the problem with Vergil is Vergil was a 147 for a while. We don't have a lot of common opponents to compare them. I don't think Vergil and him have any actual common opponents. I don't think they do, no, because pretty much all of his opponents all came at, and it's funny. Vergil started his pro career at 140. He's one of those guys who grew into that. Where Sean Porter went down over time when he was coming up. So yeah, I don't think they have any actual. I'm not seeing any actual. I'm not seeing. Yeah, I'm not seeing any common opponents. So, yeah. But I think we can. Holy shit! I'll wake up about to think if I say in a little bit. I think we can look at it and go, okay, 27-2 is a good puncher. Even though it's funny. He's 29, Vergil's 27, and they're both young. I think Lubin's probably at his best right now about how he's gonna. Hold on a second. So I just want to pop a picture of put a picture of Lubin up here real quick, but and it's funny. I think where is it? But with Lubin, in terms of he has earned himself back into fighting for this WBC interim title. He's earned his way, and he fought well against Fundora. He lost, but He destroyed Luis Arias, had a convincing win over Ramos Jr. Or it was close, but he won the fight, and then he beat the crap out of Andreal Holmes and finished him in round 11. And was winning the fight too. So he's had 3 good solid wins since the fight with Fundora. He's gotten better, but I think this fight has more to do with how Vergil Ortiz looks. Vergil Ortiz, I'm gonna go into him. I'm on my own video about him before I go over, do a video about this upcoming fight. But quick little thing about Vergil, I thought Vergil Ortiz, when he beat Brad Solomon, when he beat Mean Machine, I thought he was going to be a welterweight champ for a while, and then he went up to 154. I'm like, what's he doing up here? And he had the fight with Bohachuk, which was pretty close, kind of controversial, but it was a good fight. He fought well. And then the Madrimov fight, he beat Madrimov better than Bud did, which was pretty crazy to say. Now Madrimov was, I don't think Madrimov fought as smart. He fought more reckless, but he still fought good, and it was still a good fight and a big win, Vergil. I haven't seen Lubin against Madrimov. I haven't seen Lubin. I mean, the thing is, the only thing we really have is, even through Fundora or Rosario, we have no connection really. So all we can base it is that Lubin is going to fight good. I think Lubin will be competitive. I think will most likely be similar to the Fundora fight, where over time he might hurt Vergil once. I don't think he's going to drop him, but I think he might hurt Vergil once or twice. And Fedora's had some problems, and you're not. His chin's pretty good actually, but he's had some problems with, his balance. He's a big, he's a very tall, he's pretty much slender man. He's a big, tall, gangly 154 fighter. Whereas Vergil's, a lot more compact. He's a former, he's a former welterweight. Former, early in his career was fighting at 140. I think what's going to help for Lubin is that he's going to have the advantage of being the natural 154, of being the natural fighter at this weight class. But Vergil's been up at this division for a good while, so I don't know. Does Lubin have a chance? Yes, he has a chance. Is he probably going to win? Probably not, but I think he's going to fight good. I wouldn't be shocked if this is like the Bohachuk fight, where he fights like Bohachuk and has success in range, has success off the clinch and countering and stuff, and throwing some good flurries, and he loses a controversial decision. I wouldn't be shocked, but I think he now it really depends. If Vergil comes out, because the one thing we've seen with Lubin is that when you take his shot, and we saw this in the Fundora fight, when you take his shot and you come back at him, there's 2 things. Can you take all his shots and be okay? Because if you don't, you're going to let Jason Rosario and get screwed and get blown out of the water. Or you're going to be like Fundora. Take it and come back and hurt him. And then once you put the pain on him, he has wilted. Now, I don't think he was done in the Fundora fight, but it was a good decision to stop the fight. He was getting beat up pretty bad. It was a good fight. So I don't know. We'll see. Chris Algieri, stop getting on my BoxRec. I don't freaking care right now, BoxRec. Stop showing me this crap. I don't care. So I think it's going to be a good fight. I don't know who's going to win. So, but that is the career so far of a 29-year-old Erickson Lubin, 27-2. He is fighting Vergil Ortiz for the WBC interim World Junior Middleweight title on November 8th, 2025 at the that's a Dickles. That's the Dickies Arena in Fort Worth, Texas. So stay tuned for my future videos on all boxing stuff. Obviously future videos in general, but my future videos on how we're looking at Vergil, his career so far, and how he'll do in this fight, and then my overall. I don't know what's happening that weekend. I'll have to look at the schedule. Maybe I'll this. My predictions and my picks and my thoughts on the fight might be in a fight preview or just a separate video. Who knows? But that's going to do it, guys. I think that Erickson Lubin is going to give a good fight, but we'll see. Because he has now. One thing's going to happen. I don't think he's going to get blown out. Because even though Vergil's good, if Vergil was going to knock him out in the first round like Charlo did, he would have had to knock out Bohachuk or Madrimov, and he wasn't close to knocking out either of them. So I think in that way. I mean, Lubin might hit harder. Who knows? But we'll see. So that's gonna do it, guys. My name is Jake, and thank you for watching today. And remember, the greatest fighters always leave in a final round. See you guys. Boop.